What does it truly mean to have faith before seeing any visible change in your situation? It means you choose to believe in a reality that has not yet appeared in front of your eyes. It means your confidence is not built on evidence, but on trust. Anyone can believe when the door is already open. Anyone can rejoice when the miracle is already in their hands. But faith begins when the door is still closed and the miracle has not yet arrived. Faith before sight requires spiritual vision. It asks you to look beyond what is happening in the natural world and recognize that there is another realm at work. Just because you cannot see movement does not mean nothing is moving. Just because you cannot hear answers does not mean heaven is silent. Often, the greatest activity is happening in places your physical eyes cannot reach. To have faith before visible change also means refusing to let circumstances control your inner condition. If you only feel hopeful when things improve, your faith is dependent on outcomes. But real faith remains steady even when circumstances remain the same. It says, even if today looks unchanged, I believe tomorrow holds promise. It stands firm in the middle of uncertainty and declares that what is unseen is more powerful than what is seen. This kind of faith is not denial. It does not ignore problems or pretend challenges do not exist. Instead, it acknowledges the reality of the situation but chooses to believe that the situation does not have the final word. Faith says, yes, this mountain is real. Yes, this delay is painful. But I believe there is a greater power working behind it all. When you live with this kind of faith, your language changes. You stop speaking defeat. You stop declaring hopelessness. Instead of saying, nothing will ever change, you begin to say, change is already in motion. Instead of saying, I am stuck, you declare, I am being positioned. Your words align with expectation rather than fear. Faith before sight also transforms how you wait. Waiting no longer feels like punishment, it becomes preparation. You begin to understand that delays are not always denials. Sometimes what feels like stillness is actually development. Roots grow underground long before fruit appears above the surface. In the same way, unseen growth may be taking place in your character, your resilience, and your spiritual depth. This kind of faith requires courage. It requires you to hold on when others let go. It requires you to trust when logic tells you to doubt. But the reward of such faith is powerful. When the visible change finally arrives, you realize it did not begin on the day you saw it. It began on the day you believed for it. To have faith before seeing change means you anchor your heart in promise rather than proof. You choose hope over fear. You choose expectation over discouragement. You live as if the answer is already on its way, even while the evidence is still forming, and something remarkable happens when you live this way. Peace begins to guard your heart. Strength begins to rise within you. Your joy is no longer postponed until circumstances improve. You carry assurance in the middle of uncertainty. Faith before sight is not easy, but it is powerful. It is the bridge between where you are and where you are going. It is the quiet confidence that whispers, even now, something greater is unfolding. And when you embrace that confidence, you step into a dimension of living where hope is not fragile, but unshakable. How can you trust God's timing when everything around you feels delayed or silent? This is one of the deepest struggles of the human heart. It is not always the battle itself that weakens you. It is the waiting. It is the silence. It is praying and not seeing immediate change. It is believing and still standing in the same place. In those moments, doubt whispers, maybe nothing is happening. But silence does not mean absence, and delay does not mean denial. Trusting God's timing begins with understanding that His perspective is higher than yours. You see the present moment. You feel today's pressure. But He sees the entire path, the beginning, the middle, and the end. What feels late to you may actually be perfectly aligned in a greater plan. If answers came too quickly, you might not be ready to sustain them. If doors open too soon, you might walk into spaces your character has not yet matured enough to handle. Sometimes the delay is preparation. Just as a builder strengthens a foundation before raising the walls, God strengthens you before releasing what you asked for. The waiting season develops patience, humility, endurance, and deeper faith. These qualities cannot be rushed. They are formed slowly, often in silence. Trusting God's timing also requires surrender. Control is comforting. We want schedules. We want certainty. We want guarantees. But trust grows when control is released. It is saying, even if I do not understand the timeline, I believe there is purpose in it. That kind of surrender brings peace, not because you suddenly know all the answers, but because you rest in the one who does. When everything feels silent, remember that growth is often invisible. A seed buried in the ground looks lifeless from the outside. There is no visible evidence of change, yet beneath the surface, transformation is happening. Roots are forming. Strength is developing. Life is pushing upward. In the same way, your unseen season may be your most important one. What feels like inactivity may actually be internal construction. Trust also grows when you reflect on past faithfulness. Think back to moments when you once felt stuck, confused, or forgotten, yet somehow you moved forward. Somehow the answer came. Somehow the path opened. The same faithfulness that carried you then is still present now. Memory strengthens confidence. When you remember previous breakthroughs, you gain courage for the current delay. It is also important to guard your thoughts during waiting seasons. Delay can tempt you to compare your journey with others. You may see someone else advancing faster, receiving opportunities sooner, celebrating victories earlier. But every story has a different rhythm. Comparison steals trust. Focus restores it. Your timing is unique because your calling, your growth, and your purpose are unique. Trusting God's timing does not mean you stop acting. It means you continue moving faithfully even without visible results. You keep praying. You keep believing. You keep preparing. You live as though the promise is certain, even if the schedule is unclear. That steady obedience builds inner strength. And here is something powerful. Often the moment you feel most forgotten is the moment things are closest to shifting. The darkest hour comes just before dawn. The pressure intensifies right before breakthrough. Silence grows deeper right before the sound of movement begins. When you trust God's timing, anxiety loses its grip. You no longer measure progress only by visible signs. You measure it by inner growth. You recognize that while you are waiting for answers, you are becoming stronger, wiser, and more prepared. So even in delay, choose confidence. Even in silence, choose belief. Even when nothing seems to move, trust that something is aligning. The clock you see is not the only clock that exists. There is a divine rhythm at work, and it is never late. In what ways do your words influence your faith and your future? This question reaches deeper than many people realize. Words are not just sounds that disappear into the air. Words shape perspective. Words frame expectation. Words either strengthen belief or reinforce doubt. Every time you speak, you are agreeing with something, either fear or faith. When you constantly say, "Nothing will change," your heart begins to accept that as truth. Your mind searches for evidence to support that statement. Your energy weakens. Your hope shrinks. Over time, your outlook becomes limited by the language you repeatedly use. But when you begin to declare, "Change is coming," even before you see it, something shifts inside you. Your posture straightens. Your thoughts become more expectant. Your actions become more aligned with possibility. Words influence faith because faith grows through agreement. What you repeatedly confess, you eventually believe more deeply. If your mouth consistently speaks defeat, your spirit absorbs defeat. If your mouth consistently speaks hope, your spirit absorbs hope. This is why guarding your speech is so powerful. You are not just talking, you are planting seeds in your inner world. Consider how words affect your courage. When facing a challenge, if you say, "I can't handle this," you immediately feel smaller. The problem feels larger. But if you say, "This is difficult, but I will grow through it," you create space for strength. The situation may not change instantly, but your inner capacity expands. The battle outside remains the same, yet the battle inside begins to turn in your favor. Your words also shape how you see your future. If you describe your life as stuck, unlucky, or hopeless, you unknowingly limit your imagination. You stop expecting opportunities. You stop preparing for breakthroughs. But when you speak about your future with expectation, even carefully, even quietly, you awaken vision. You begin to think creatively. You remain alert for open doors. Faith becomes active instead of passive. There is also a deeper dimension to this. Words do not only affect you, they influence the atmosphere around you. Encouraging words lift environments. Negative words drain them. If you consistently speak life into your home, your workplace, or your relationships, you build an atmosphere where growth feels possible. If you constantly speak criticism or despair, the atmosphere becomes heavy. Over time, that environment reflects the tone of the language spoken within it. Speaking faith does not mean denying reality. It means refusing to let reality define the final outcome. You can acknowledge difficulty while still declaring hope. You can admit weakness while still affirming strength is rising. Faith-filled words are not unrealistic. They are forward-looking. They declare that the present condition is temporary. Another powerful truth is that your words influence your consistency. When you publicly declare commitment, "I will not give up, I will keep believing, I will continue moving forward," you reinforce your own determination. You remind yourself of your direction. Your speech becomes a contract with your intention. Changing your words requires awareness. Many people speak negatively out of habit, but transformation begins when you pause before speaking. Ask yourself, does this sentence build faith or weaken it? Does this statement create hope or reinforce fear? Small adjustments in language create significant shifts over time. When you choose to speak life, you are not pretending everything is perfect. You are choosing alignment with possibility. You are deciding that your future will not be dictated by temporary frustration. You are training your heart to expect growth, your mind to anticipate opportunity, and your spirit to remain resilient. Your words are powerful tools. They can build walls or open doors. They can shrink your vision or expand it. When you intentionally speak with faith, you are shaping not only your present mindset, but also the direction of your tomorrow. How can pressure and difficult seasons become preparation instead of punishment? This question changes the way you interpret your struggles. Many people see hardship and immediately assume something has gone wrong. They think difficulty means failure, rejection, or abandonment. But what if the very thing you are trying to escape is the very thing shaping you for something greater? Pressure reveals what comfort hides. When life is easy, you may not fully recognize your strengths or weaknesses. But when challenges arise, your character is tested. Your patience is stretched. Your priorities become clearer. Pressure exposes areas that need growth, and that exposure is not meant to shame you, it is meant to strengthen you. Think about how growth works in nature. A seed must be buried in darkness before it can rise into light. Underground, unseen and unnoticed, transformation is taking place. The outer shell breaks before the inner life can emerge. From the outside, it looks like destruction. But from the inside, it is development. In the same way, difficult seasons may feel like breaking points, yet they are often breaking open something new within you. Pressure also builds endurance. Without resistance, muscles do not grow stronger. Without challenge, perseverance remains shallow. When you face obstacles and continue forward anyway, you develop resilience. You discover that you are capable of more than you imagined. The very trial you feared becomes the testimony of your strength. It is important to shift your perspective. If you see hardship as punishment, you respond with bitterness or defeat. You withdraw. You question your worth. But if you begin to see hardship as preparation, your response changes. You ask, "What is this teaching me?" instead of, "Why is this happening to me?" That single shift transforms frustration into purpose. Difficult seasons often refine your focus. When everything is comfortable, distractions multiply. But when life becomes challenging, you are forced to prioritize what truly matters. Relationships deepen, faith becomes more sincere, gratitude becomes more meaningful. You learn to appreciate small victories. You learn to depend on inner strength rather than external stability. Preparation also involves timing. Sometimes you desire promotion, expansion, or greater responsibility. But before you can sustain those blessings, your character must match your calling. Pressure shapes that character. It develops humility, compassion, discipline, and wisdom. Without those qualities, success can overwhelm you. With them, success becomes sustainable. Another powerful aspect of pressure is empathy. When you walk through pain, you gain understanding. You become more compassionate toward others facing similar struggles. Your experience equips you to support, encourage, and guide. What once felt isolating becomes a bridge connecting you to others. This does not mean you enjoy suffering or pretend it feels pleasant. Pain is real. Frustration is real. Tears are real. But preparation often involves discomfort. Growth stretches you beyond your previous limits. And stretching can feel uncomfortable before it feels empowering. In the middle of difficulty, remind yourself that the story is not finished. A chapter of struggle does not define the entire book. The season you are in is shaping skills, insight, and maturity that will serve you later. What feels heavy now may become the foundation of future strength. When you begin to view pressure as preparation, you stop asking for escape and start asking for endurance. You stop wishing the season away and start learning from it. You recognize that refinement requires fire, and strengthening requires resistance. Difficult seasons are not always signs that you are failing. Sometimes they are evidence that you are growing. And when you endure with faith and perspective, you emerge not broken, but built. What practical steps can you take to shift your focus from the problem to the promise? This is not just a spiritual idea, it is a daily discipline. Your mind naturally gravitates toward what feels urgent, and problems always feel urgent. They demand attention. They create noise. They try to convince you that they are permanent. But shifting your focus is a deliberate decision, repeated consistently until it becomes your pattern. The first practical step is awareness. You must recognize where your thoughts are spending most of their time. Are you replaying the difficulty over and over? Are you constantly imagining worst-case scenarios? Awareness breaks autopilot thinking. When you notice that your mind is circling around fear, you can interrupt it. You can gently redirect it. You can say to yourself, "I acknowledge the problem, but I will not magnify it." The second step is intentional gratitude. Gratitude is powerful because it forces your attention toward what is still working. Even in the middle of struggle, there are small evidences of grace, strength to wake up, people who care, lessons being learned, opportunities still present. When you list what remains instead of what is missing, your emotional atmosphere shifts. Gratitude does not deny difficulty, it balances perspective. Another practical step is guarding your input. What you constantly hear influences what you constantly think. If you surround yourself with negative conversations, discouraging news, or critical voices, your focus will naturally lean toward problems. But when you intentionally fill your mind with words of hope, wisdom, and encouragement, You strengthen your ability to see beyond the present obstacle. Protecting your mental environment is essential. You must also practice disciplined imagination. Problems often grow because imagination exaggerates them. But imagination can also be used to picture positive outcomes. Instead of repeatedly visualizing failure, begin to imagine resolution. Picture yourself overcoming. See yourself standing on the other side of the challenge. This is not fantasy, it is training your mind to expect movement rather than stagnation. Another powerful step is taking small forward actions. Problems feel overwhelming when you focus on their full size. But promises are often fulfilled through small, consistent steps. Ask yourself, what is one action I can take today? It may be making a phone call, learning a skill, improving your attitude, or strengthening a relationship. Small progress builds momentum, and momentum builds hope. Your language also plays a practical role. Replace absolute negative statements with growth-oriented ones. Instead of saying, "This will never work," say, "This is challenging, but I am learning." Instead of, "I am stuck," say, "I am in a season of preparation." Words reshape perception. Perception reshapes experience. Community is another essential step. Isolation magnifies problems. When you share your burdens with wise and encouraging people, perspective widens. Others can remind you of truths you temporarily forget. They can help you see possibilities you overlooked. Being surrounded by strength strengthens you. Finally, practice patience with yourself. Shifting focus is not instant. There will be days when the problem feels louder than the promise. That does not mean you failed. It means you are human. Gently return your focus again and again. Over time, this repetition builds resilience. When you consistently apply these steps, something changes internally. The problem may still exist, but it no longer defines your vision. You begin to see beyond the obstacle. You begin to expect growth. Your attention moves from what is blocking you to what is building you. And when your focus changes, your energy changes. When your energy changes, your actions change. And when your actions change, your future begins to shift. What would change in your life if you fully believe that your breakthrough is closer than you think? That single belief would transform the way you wake up in the morning. It would change the tone of your thoughts. It would reshape your attitude toward obstacles. Because when you believe something good is near, you prepare differently. You hope differently. You endure differently. If you truly believed your breakthrough was close, discouragement would lose much of its power. You would no longer interpret delays as permanent failures. Instead, you would see them as the final stretch before arrival. Just as a runner pushes harder when the finish line comes into view, your energy would rise instead of fall. Fatigue would not disappear, but it would be overshadowed by expectation. Your mindset would shift from survival to anticipation. Instead of saying, "How much longer must I endure this?" you would begin asking, "Am I ready for what is coming?" That question alone changes your posture. It moves you from passive waiting to active preparation. You would start strengthening your character, organizing your priorities, and sharpening your skills because you believe opportunity is near. Fear would also weaken. Fear thrives on the assumption that nothing will change. But if you are convinced that change is approaching, fear loses its foundation. You would take steps you once avoided. You would speak with more confidence. You would apply for opportunities, repair relationships, or pursue goals because you sense that the season is shifting. Believing your breakthrough is close would also affect your consistency. Many people give up just before progress appears because they assume their efforts are pointless. But if you were certain that results were forming just beyond your sight, you would not quit. You would pray one more time. You would try one more time. You would forgive one more time. You would persevere because you understand that persistence at the edge of breakthrough is critical. Your emotional stability would improve as well. Instead of riding waves of extreme highs and lows, you would carry steady hope. Even when a day feels heavy, you would remind yourself, this is temporary. Something is aligning. That internal reassurance builds peace. It anchors you during uncertainty. Relationships would benefit too. When you believe good things are ahead, you treat people with more patience and kindness. You are less irritable, less defensive, less bitter. Hope softens your reactions. It reminds you that the current stress is not your permanent reality. Another powerful change would occur in how you interpret challenges. Instead of viewing obstacles as proof that you are blocked, you would begin to see them as resistance that appears when progress is near. Just as pressure increases before a breakthrough moment, you would recognize that intensity sometimes signals proximity to change. That understanding keeps you from retreating when things feel hardest. Belief also fuels gratitude in advance. You would begin thanking God, not only for what has happened, but for what is about to happen. Gratitude before manifestation is a powerful act of trust. It positions your heart in expectation rather than doubt. Most importantly, fully believing your breakthrough is near would reshape your identity. You would no longer see yourself as stuck or forgotten. You would see yourself as positioned. You would walk differently, speak differently, think differently. Your confidence would not be arrogance, it would be assurance. And often, it is this shift in belief that becomes the doorway itself. Because when your heart aligns with expectation, your actions align with opportunity. When your spirit rises with hope, you step into moments you might have previously missed. If you truly believed your breakthrough was closer than you think, you would not live cautiously. You would live courageously. You would not shrink back. You would step forward. And sometimes, the distance between you and your breakthrough is simply one bold step of faith.